The cruelest lies are not the ones people tell you. They are the truth someone keeps from you. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of St. Augustine Cathedral in Manhattan, scattering brilliant colors across polished marble floors as hundreds of distinguished guests waited for one of the city's most anticipated weddings to begin. Elegant floral arrangements lined every aisle. A string quartet filled the sanctuary with gentle music, and members of the Moretti family welcomed influential business leaders, politicians, and lifelong friends with confident smiles. Everything reflected perfection, exactly as the powerful Moretti family expected. Standing near the altar, Ethan Moretti adjusted the cuff of his tailored black Italian suit while quietly staring toward the massive cathedral doors. At 43 years old, the white Caucasian mafia boss had built a reputation for discipline, composure, and unwavering authority. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his light stubble carefully trimmed, and the realistic black tattoos beneath the open collar of his white dress shirt hinted at a dangerous past hidden beneath remarkable self-control. Anyone watching him would have believed he was ready to begin a new chapter of his life. Only Ethan knew something felt strangely empty inside. Across the front rows, several members of the Moretti family exchanged quiet conversations until one elegant older woman noticed someone entering through the back of the cathedral. Her smile immediately disappeared. "Well," she said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "I did not think she would have the courage to show her face today." Heads slowly turned toward the entrance. Claire Morgan stood quietly beneath the open cathedral doors wearing a simple navy blue dress beneath a light beige coat. The white Caucasian woman looked graceful rather than dramatic, her blonde hair resting softly over one shoulder, her blue eyes calm despite the dozens of strangers suddenly staring at her. She did not wear expensive jewelry. She did not arrive surrounded by attention. She simply stood there with quiet dignity. Another family member laughed softly. Perhaps she finally realized what she threw away. Someone else added, "Some people never know when it is time to let go." Claire did not answer a single insult. Instead, she glanced behind her and gently extended both hands. 3 small children stepped into the cathedral beside her. 2 boys and 1 little girl, each around 6 years old, walked confidently while holding their mother's hands. Their matching navy outfits made them look almost identical except for small differences in hairstyle and expression. The little girl's bright smile reflected Claire's warmth, while both boys carried the same quiet confidence that seemed strangely familiar. Conversations throughout the cathedral stopped almost instantly. Ethan looked toward the entrance with polite curiosity before his expression slowly changed. The oldest boy had his dark hair. The younger boy carried the same determined posture Ethan had seen every morning in his own mirror. The little girl's eyes held the exact silver blue shade that had appeared in every Moretti family photograph for generations. Ethan took one slow step away from the altar without realizing he had moved. His heartbeat became louder than the music surrounding him. Claire calmly guided the children halfway down the aisle before stopping several feet away. She never looked toward the guests who had mocked her. Her eyes remained fixed only on Ethan. The cathedral had become so quiet that every breath seemed to echo beneath the towering ceiling. Finally, the oldest boy gently released his mother's hand and looked directly at Ethan with innocent curiosity. His small voice carried clearly through the silent sanctuary. "Mom said you never stopped loving us. Is that really true?" Ethan's entire world seemed to stop. He stared at the child, unable to breathe, unable to answer, unable to understand why the little boy standing before him looked exactly like the photographs of himself at 6 years old. Then the youngest boy quietly reached into his pocket, removed a folded drawing covered with colorful crayons, and carefully held it toward Ethan. Across the top of the paper, written in careful childish handwriting, were 4 simple words that shattered every certainty Ethan believed about his own life. "For Daddy, from all 3 of us." Ignoring a child's question is easy until you realize the child is asking about your own heart. The colorful drawing trembled slightly in the little boy's hands as Ethan Moretti slowly walked down the cathedral aisle, unable to take his eyes off the 3 children standing beside Claire Morgan. Every guest remained frozen in silence. The bride waiting near the altar lowered her bouquet, too stunned to interrupt the extraordinary moment unfolding before everyone. Ethan finally accepted the folded paper with careful hands. Inside was a simple crayon drawing of a family standing beneath a bright yellow sun. A smiling woman held the hands of 3 children while an empty space remained beside them. Above the empty figure, each child had written the same word in uneven letters. Daddy. Ethan swallowed hard as emotions he had spent years burying rose without warning. Looking back toward Claire, he quietly asked, "What is this?" Claire met his eyes without anger or accusation. "It is what they wanted to give you if they ever had the chance." One of the older women in the Moretti family stepped forward, unable to hide her disbelief. "Claire, this is completely inappropriate. You cannot interrupt a wedding with such unbelievable claims." Claire remained calm. "I did not come here to interrupt anyone. I came because today was the last day I could continue allowing my children to believe their father chose never to meet them." Murmurs spread through the cathedral. Ethan slowly looked from one child to another. The oldest boy stood with quiet confidence. The younger boy watched Ethan with cautious hope. The little girl smiled shyly while holding a small stuffed rabbit against her chest. Every familiar expression seemed to mirror photographs Ethan had seen of himself as a child inside the Moretti family estate. He knelt until he was at eye level with the children. His voice became gentle. "What are your names?" The oldest boy answered first. "I am Noah." The younger boy smiled. "I am Liam." The little girl hugged her rabbit tighter. "And I am Emma." Ethan nodded slowly, repeating each name as though committing them to memory forever. Emma suddenly tilted her head. "Mom said you like pancakes on Sunday mornings." Ethan blinked in surprise. "I do." Emma smiled proudly. "So do we." A quiet laugh escaped several guests before silence returned. Ethan looked back toward Claire. How could they possibly know that? Claire reached into the leather satchel hanging from her shoulder and carefully removed a small wooden box, worn by time, but lovingly preserved. She stepped closer and placed it into Ethan's hands. "Everything I tried to tell you is inside." Ethan opened the box carefully. Resting inside were dozens of unopened envelopes addressed to him in Claire's familiar handwriting. Beneath them lay ultrasound photographs, birthday pictures, hospital bracelets, and tiny handmade Father's Day cards that had never been delivered. Every envelope carried a different postmark stretching across 7 years. None had ever been opened. Ethan's breathing became uneven as he gently lifted the first letter. The date stopped him cold. It had been mailed only 3 weeks after their divorce became final. Another letter followed 1 year later. Then another. Then another. Every one of them addressed directly to him at the Moretti estate. Ethan slowly looked toward his family seated in the front rows. Confusion replaced certainty inside his eyes. "I never received any of these." Claire answered quietly. "I know." The cathedral remained completely still as Ethan continued searching through the box until he reached the very bottom. There, beneath every letter and photograph, rested a sealed envelope bearing the official logo of the hospital where Claire had given birth. Across the front, written in bold black letters, were words Ethan could never have imagined reading on the day he believed he was beginning a new marriage. Confidential. Paternity confirmation. Requested by Ethan Moretti. Never collected. Some promises spend years waiting inside unopened envelopes before they finally find the person they were written for. Ethan Moretti stared at the sealed hospital envelope while the cathedral remained completely silent around him. His fingers hesitated above the official seal, almost afraid that opening it would permanently divide his life into everything before this moment and everything after it. Claire Morgan stood quietly beside the 3 children, offering neither pressure nor explanation. She had not come to demand anything. She had simply come carrying the truth. Ethan carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the documents inside. The first page confirmed that a paternity test had been requested shortly before the triplets were born. The second page carried the completed laboratory results, officially identifying Ethan Moretti as the biological father of all 3 children with overwhelming scientific certainty. Attached behind the report was a notice stating that multiple certified copies had been mailed to the Moretti estate after no one arrived to collect the results. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief moment as the weight of 7 lost years settled across his shoulders. "I never saw any of this," he whispered. Claire nodded gently. "I believed you had." Ethan looked up, confusion filling his voice. "Why would you think that?" Claire slowly removed one final envelope from the wooden box. Unlike the others, It had already been opened. Inside was a single sheet of paper bearing Ethan's printed name, but not his handwriting. She handed it to him carefully. "This was delivered to my apartment 2 weeks after the hospital mailed your results." Ethan read the short message, his expression slowly changing from confusion to disbelief. It claimed that Ethan had received the paternity confirmation, wished Claire and the children well, but had chosen to move forward with his own life and requested no further contact. The signature beneath the letter carried his name. Ethan immediately shook his head. "I never wrote this." Claire answered softly. "I know that now." The guests watched in complete silence as Ethan compared the signature with his own driver's license resting inside his wallet. The difference was subtle but unmistakable. Someone had carefully imitated his handwriting, yet several small details were wrong. Claire continued, speaking with remarkable calm. "At first I refused to believe it. I wrote again and again, because I thought there had to be some mistake. Every birthday, every Christmas, every first day of school, every time one of the children asked when they would finally meet their father." She looked toward Noah, Liam, and Emma with quiet love. "None of my letters ever came back. I believed you had simply chosen silence." Ethan slowly looked at the children. Noah reached into his small backpack and removed a stack of folded papers secured with a blue ribbon. "These are mine," he said proudly. Liam smiled and lifted another bundle tied with a green ribbon. "These are my letters." Emma hugged her stuffed rabbit before offering a smaller collection decorated with tiny flower stickers. "Mine too." Ethan accepted each bundle carefully, his hands trembling slightly as he realized they contained years of bedtime stories, school achievements, birthday wishes, handmade Father's Day cards, and simple messages from children who had never stopped believing their father might one day answer. Tears quietly formed in Ethan's eyes as he read the first sentence written in Noah's careful handwriting. "Dear Dad, Mom says you are very brave. I hope you know I saved you a seat at my school concert." Ethan could no longer speak. Every missing year seemed to unfold across those pages. Claire stepped no closer than before, respecting the moment completely. "I almost did not come today," she admitted softly. "But this morning Emma asked me whether fathers can miss children they have never met. I realized none of them deserved another day without the truth." Ethan slowly raised his eyes toward Claire. Before he could answer, an elderly priest who had quietly witnessed everything from the front of the cathedral looked toward the Moretti family and spoke with gentle wisdom. "Sometimes the greatest miracle is not discovering the truth. It is discovering how many people spent years protecting hope while waiting for it to arrive. The truth does not become less powerful because it arrives years late. It becomes impossible to ignore." Ethan Moretti remained standing in the center of the cathedral with the bundles of letters resting carefully in his hands, while every guest waited for him to say something. Instead of speaking immediately, he slowly turned toward the front rows where the senior members of the Moretti family sat in stunned silence. His sharp eyes searched every familiar face, looking not for guilt, but for understanding. "Who handled my personal correspondence after my divorce?" he asked calmly. No one answered. The quiet became heavier with every passing second. Finally, the family's longtime estate manager, Harold Whitman, stepped forward from the side aisle. The elderly man had worked for the Moretti estate for more than 30 years, earning complete trust from every generation. His face had turned pale. "Mr. Moretti," he said softly, "there is something you deserve to know." Ethan looked directly at him. "Tell me." Harold lowered his eyes before continuing. 7 years ago, your grandmother instructed that all personal letters addressed to you during the divorce should be screened before reaching your office. She believed emotional distractions would interfere with your responsibilities to the family. A wave of disbelief spread through the cathedral. Ethan's grandmother slowly rose from her seat, maintaining the elegant posture that had made her the respected matriarch of the family for decades. "I made decisions that I believed protected our legacy," she said firmly. "Claire was no longer your wife. You needed stability, not more confusion." Claire remained silent, refusing to interrupt. Ethan's expression did not show anger. It showed heartbreak. "Did you know she was carrying my children?" he asked. The older woman hesitated for the first time. "I learned the truth after the hospital contacted the estate." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "And you kept it from me?" She answered with quiet conviction. "I believed the children would have a more peaceful life away from the complications of this family. I also believed you deserved the opportunity to build a future without looking backward. Ethan slowly held up one of Noah's letters. These children were never my past. They were my future. The words echoed through the cathedral. Harold reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and carefully removed a small leather folder that had remained locked away for years. I could not remain silent any longer, he admitted. Inside were official mail logs from the Moretti estate, each entry documenting certified letters from Claire, hospital notifications, and legal correspondence that had arrived but had never been delivered to Ethan personally. Every document carried dates, signatures, and internal routing notes confirming that the correspondence had been intercepted before reaching him. Ethan examined each page carefully. Every missing year suddenly had an explanation. Claire quietly looked toward the stained glass windows as though releasing a burden she had carried for far too long. She had spent 7 years believing Ethan had abandoned their family. Ethan had spent 7 years believing Claire had disappeared without explanation. Neither of them had chosen silence. Silence had been chosen for them. The bride standing near the altar finally stepped forward with remarkable grace. She looked at Ethan, then at Claire and the 3 children. I think everyone here understands this wedding cannot continue today, she said gently. There was no bitterness in her voice, only compassion for a truth far greater than the ceremony itself. Ethan nodded respectfully. I am deeply sorry. She offered a small understanding smile. You owe your apology somewhere else. Ethan slowly turned toward Claire, but before he could speak, little Liam reached out and carefully slipped his tiny hand into Ethan's. The 6-year-old looked up with innocent hope and asked the question that no adult inside the cathedral had been brave enough to ask. Now that you know where we have been all this time, will you come home with us today? The smallest hand can sometimes lead a grown man toward the life he never realized he had lost. Ethan Moretti looked down as Liam's tiny fingers wrapped gently around his hand. The innocent question echoed through the cathedral long after the little boy stopped speaking. Ethan felt years of regret pressing against his heart. He knelt once more until he was level with the 3 children. His voice, usually calm and commanding, carried a tenderness no one in the Moretti family had ever heard before. If you will let me, I would like to spend every day making up for the time we lost. Noah studied Ethan carefully before asking, does that mean you really want to know us? Ethan nodded without hesitation. More than anything. Emma smiled shyly and stepped closer, still holding her stuffed rabbit. Mom always said good people tell the truth, even when it hurts. Ethan looked toward Claire, understanding how faithfully she had raised their children despite believing he had abandoned them. She had never taught them to hate him. She had taught them kindness. That realization humbled him more than any accusation ever could. The priest quietly suggested moving the conversation somewhere more private, allowing the guests to leave peacefully. Within the hour, Ethan, Claire, the triplets, Harold Whitman, and several trusted family advisors gathered inside the historic library of the Moretti estate overlooking the Hudson River. Warm afternoon sunlight filtered through tall windows lined with shelves of leather-bound books collected over generations. The atmosphere felt solemn but hopeful. Ethan placed the wooden box of letters on the large oak table. I want to read every single one, he said softly. Claire nodded. They belong to you. For the next 2 hours, Ethan carefully opened letter after letter. He read about Noah losing his first tooth and hoping his father would someday hear the story. He read Liam's excitement after learning to ride a bicycle with training wheels. He smiled through tears while reading Emma's description of drawing a Father's Day picture every year, even though she did not know where to send it. Each page revealed another piece of the childhood he had unknowingly missed. Occasionally, one of the children quietly explained the memory behind a drawing or photograph, laughing as they remembered funny moments that had once seemed ordinary. Ethan listened to every word with complete attention. When Noah proudly showed a ribbon he had won at a school science fair, Ethan congratulated him with genuine admiration. Liam eagerly described his love for baseball, and Ethan promised to attend his very next game. Emma proudly displayed a recipe card she had written with Claire for blueberry pancakes. Ethan smiled warmly. Would you teach me how to make them? Emma's eyes brightened immediately. Only if you promise not to burn them. Gentle laughter filled the library, easing years of invisible distance. As the children enjoyed cookies prepared by the estate kitchen, Harold quietly approached Ethan with another folder. "There is one more matter you should know about," he said. Inside were financial records showing that Claire had refused every anonymous payment the Moretti family had attempted to send after learning about the children. Ethan looked toward Claire with quiet surprise. She answered before he could ask, "I never wanted money. I wanted their father to know they existed." Ethan slowly closed the folder. Every decision Claire had made reflected dignity rather than resentment. She had worked 2 jobs, raised 3 children with love, and protected their image of a father she believed had rejected them because she never wanted bitterness to become part of their childhood. Ethan realized she had shown greater strength than he had ever imagined. Just as he prepared to apologize, his family attorney entered the library carrying a newly delivered package marked with the seal of the Moretti family archives. "Mr. Moretti," he said carefully, "our archivist found something hidden behind your late grandfather's personal records this afternoon. I believe it explains who first ordered every letter from Claire to disappear. The greatest inheritance a father can leave his children is not wealth. It is the courage to choose truth over pride." The sealed archive package rested on the polished oak table as every person inside the Moretti library watched Ethan carefully break the aged wax seal. Inside lay several estate memorandums, handwritten instructions, certified mail receipts, and one leather-bound journal that had belonged to his late grandfather. Ethan slowly opened the journal, discovering a series of dated entries describing growing concern over the family's internal disagreements during his divorce from Claire. One page immediately caught his attention. It described a private conversation between his grandfather and his grandmother shortly after Claire announced her pregnancy. His grandfather had written that the children deserved to know both parents and warned that hiding the truth would create pain that no amount of wealth could ever repair. Attached beside the journal page was a copy of his grandfather's final written instruction ordering every piece of Claire's correspondence to be delivered directly to Ethan without interference. Beneath it rested another document dated only 3 days later. The instruction had been quietly canceled and replaced under the authority of the family matriarch after his grandfather unexpectedly passed away. Harold Whitman lowered his eyes. "I discovered these records only this morning behind several archived property files. They were intentionally stored where no one would think to search." Ethan remained silent as he slowly pieced together the entire sequence of events. His grandfather had tried to protect his future family. After his passing, those protections disappeared. Claire had spent 7 years believing she had been abandoned. Ethan had spent 7 years believing she had chosen to disappear forever. Neither had betrayed the other. Their lives had been redirected by decisions made without either of their knowledge. Claire quietly wiped a tear from her cheek, not because she felt vindicated, but because the unanswered questions that had haunted her for years finally had honest answers. Ethan carefully closed the journal before looking toward his grandmother, who had remained seated quietly near the fireplace since arriving at the estate. Her confident posture had softened beneath the weight of undeniable evidence. She spoke first. "Every decision I made was born from fear. I believed our family name needed protecting. I convinced myself that removing uncertainty would protect everyone." Ethan answered gently rather than angrily. "You protected the family name, but you separated a father from his children." The older woman closed her eyes, allowing the painful truth to settle in complete silence. Noah, Liam, and Emma watched the adults with innocent curiosity, too young to understand every detail but old enough to recognize sadness when they saw it. Emma quietly walked across the room carrying her stuffed rabbit and placed it into her great-grandmother's hands. "Mom says people cry because they wish they could change something," she whispered. "You can hold Mr. Buttons until you feel better." The simple kindness dissolved every remaining wall inside the room. Ethan's grandmother gently hugged the little rabbit and, for the first time in many years, allowed herself to cry openly. Claire walked closer, not to celebrate being right, but to offer quiet compassion. "The children deserve peace more than any of us deserve to win," she said softly. Ethan looked at Claire with growing admiration. Even after everything she had endured, she continued choosing grace instead of resentment. That evening, the family gathered around the long dining table for the first shared meal they had ever experienced together. Noah proudly explained his science projects. Liam enthusiastically described his baseball team. Emma insisted everyone taste the blueberry pancakes she and Claire had prepared with the estate chef. Ethan listened to every story as though trying to recover 7 missing years in a single evening. Laughter gradually replaced awkward silence, and hope slowly replaced regret. As dinner came to an end, Ethan's family attorney quietly entered the room carrying a telephone. "Mr. Moretti," he said respectfully, "the independent forensic document examiner has completed the signature analysis on the false letter Claire received years ago. The results identify exactly who forged your name, and the answer changes everything once again. The moment the truth receives a name, every lie begins to lose its power." Ethan Moretti accepted the forensic report with steady hands while everyone around the dining table watched in complete silence. The independent examiner had compared hundreds of handwriting samples, estate records, legal correspondence, and archived signatures collected over several weeks. The conclusion was clear, detailed, and supported by overwhelming evidence. The false letter Claire Morgan had received 7 years earlier had never been written by Ethan. It had been carefully prepared by the former family legal advisor, Richard Hale, acting under direct administrative instructions approved during the confusion that followed Ethan's grandfather's passing. Richard had copied Ethan's signature from older contracts, altered several personal letters, and arranged for the forged response to reach Claire before any legitimate communication could leave the Moretti estate. Harold quietly explained that Richard had retired several years earlier and recently agreed to cooperate with the independent review after learning the complete investigation was underway. Ethan slowly closed the report and looked toward Claire. "You spent 7 years believing I chose to abandon you." Claire nodded gently. "And you spent 7 years believing I disappeared." Neither of them spoke for several moments because no words could fully describe the years they had both lost. Noah quietly looked from his father to his mother before asking the question every child naturally wanted answered. "Does this mean nobody wanted us to be together?" Claire immediately knelt beside her son and smiled warmly. "No, sweetheart. It means some adults made decisions because they were afraid. Fear can make people believe they are protecting someone when they are actually hurting everyone." Ethan sat beside Noah and gently rested a hand on the little boy's shoulder. "Your mother is right. None of this was ever your fault. The 3 of you have always been the greatest gift either of us could have received." Emma climbed onto Claire's lap while Liam leaned comfortably against Ethan, as though the distance between them had already begun disappearing. Later that afternoon, Ethan invited every senior member of the Moretti family into the estate's historic conference room. Instead of anger, the meeting was guided by honesty. The independent report, the archived letters, the hospital documents, the forged signature analysis, and his grandfather's journal were presented openly to every relative. No one interrupted. No one argued with the evidence. Ethan's grandmother stood slowly after reading the final page. Looking directly at Claire, she spoke with a voice filled not with authority, but with regret. "I cannot return the years that were taken from you. I cannot replace birthdays, school concerts, or bedtime stories that Ethan should have shared. I can only acknowledge my mistakes and ask whether forgiveness is something I may someday earn." Claire answered with remarkable grace. "Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is choosing not to let yesterday decide tomorrow." Several family members quietly wiped away tears. Harold lowered his head, relieved that the burden he had carried for so many years had finally ended. Ethan then addressed everyone gathered around the table. "This family has always believed strength came from protecting our name. Beginning today, our strength will come from protecting the truth." His words were met with silent agreement rather than applause because everyone understood the importance of the promise. As the meeting ended, Noah carefully unfolded another drawing he had completed that afternoon. This time the picture showed 6 people standing together beneath a bright blue sky. Ethan noticed one new detail. The empty space beside Claire had disappeared. In its place stood a smiling father holding the hands of 3 children. At the bottom of the page, written carefully in large, colorful letters, Noah had added one simple sentence: "Families can find each other again." Ethan smiled through grateful tears, unaware that Claire had quietly received an unexpected message on her phone only moments earlier. The sender was the woman who had nearly become Ethan's bride, and her request would soon change all of their lives in the most unexpected and healing way. Time does not repair a broken family by itself. People do, one honest choice at a time. 3 months passed after the unforgettable day that had changed every life connected to the Moretti family. Spring arrived across Manhattan, replacing cold gray mornings with warm sunlight that filled the streets with new energy. Ethan Moretti had quietly rearranged his entire schedule. Meetings that once consumed every hour of his week were now planned around school pickups, baseball practice, piano lessons, and Sunday breakfasts. For the first time in his adult life, the powerful mafia boss discovered that the happiest moments rarely happened inside boardrooms or private offices. They happened while helping Noah build a model bridge for his science class, cheering as Liam finally hit his first home run without using a batting tee, and laughing when Emma insisted that blueberry pancakes always tasted better if everyone helped stir the batter together. Claire Morgan watched these moments with cautious optimism. She had not forgotten the pain of the past, but every promise Ethan made was now supported by quiet actions instead of dramatic speeches. He never pressured her to return. He never asked the children to forgive him quickly. He simply appeared every day, exactly when he said he would, proving that consistency could slowly rebuild trust where words alone never could. One afternoon, Claire received another message from the woman who had nearly married Ethan. Her name was Victoria Collins, and instead of resentment, her message carried remarkable kindness. She invited Claire to meet at a small cafe overlooking Central Park. Claire accepted. When they met, Victoria smiled warmly before speaking. "I wanted to tell you something in person. Walking away from that wedding was the easiest difficult decision I have ever made. The moment I saw Ethan looking at those children, I realized his heart had already chosen its home years ago." Claire quietly thanked her. Victoria continued with gentle sincerity. "I hope one day your children know that no one lost that day. The truth simply found the family it belonged to." The conversation ended with mutual respect, leaving Claire deeply moved by the unexpected grace of someone who could easily have chosen bitterness instead. Meanwhile, Ethan gathered the senior members of the Moretti family at the estate once again, not to discuss business, but to introduce a new family charter. Every policy allowing private correspondence to be intercepted without the recipient's knowledge was permanently abolished. Independent legal oversight was established for every family trust, charitable foundation, and estate matter. Ethan looked around the room before speaking. Power without accountability created 7 years of unnecessary pain. This family will never repeat that mistake. His grandmother quietly signed the new charter first, followed by every other family member. She then approached Claire with a small velvet box. Inside rested an antique silver locket that had belonged to Ethan's mother. "This should have been given to you many years ago," she said softly. Claire accepted it with gratitude, understanding that the gesture represented reconciliation rather than obligation. That evening, the entire family gathered in the gardens behind the Moretti estate for Emma's 7th birthday celebration. Strings of warm lights hung from old oak trees while children laughed across the lawn chasing colorful balloons. Noah proudly showed Ethan the latest science project they had built together. Liam insisted that his father throw one more baseball before dinner. Emma carefully placed 7 candles onto her birthday cake before looking around at everyone she loved. "Can we make one wish together instead of 3?" she asked. Everyone smiled as she closed her eyes. "I wish nobody in our family ever has to wonder if they are loved again." Silence gently settled across the garden as every adult absorbed the simple wisdom spoken by a 7-year-old child. Ethan reached for Claire's hand, but before their fingers touched, Harold Whitman hurried across the garden, carrying an official envelope stamped with the seal of the New York Family Court. Smiling through tears, he announced, "The judge has approved the final order this afternoon. Beginning tomorrow morning, the 3 children will officially carry both of their parents' family names. And there is one more surprise waiting inside this envelope for all of you. The strongest families are not the ones that never break apart. They are the ones brave enough to find their way back to one another." Harold Whitman carefully opened the official envelope as every member of the Moretti family gathered beneath the glowing lights in the garden. Smiling warmly, he removed the court documents and handed them to Ethan Moretti first. The judge had approved the legal recognition of the triplets' full names as Noah Moretti Morgan, Liam Moretti Morgan, and Emma Moretti Morgan, honoring both parents equally. Beneath the order rested another document that surprised everyone. It formally approved the creation of the Morgan Moretti Family Foundation, a charitable organization dedicated to supporting single parents, children separated from their families by legal misunderstandings, and educational scholarships for young students across New York. Claire Morgan looked at Ethan with quiet disbelief. "You started this?" Ethan smiled gently. "We started this. Our story should help someone else avoid the pain we lived through." Tears quietly filled Claire's blue eyes as she realized he was no longer trying to repair the past with expensive gifts or grand promises. He was building a better future for families they would never even meet. 1 year later, the foundation held its first annual Family Day celebration on the lawn overlooking the Hudson River. Hundreds of families attended. Children laughed beneath colorful balloons. Local musicians performed cheerful songs, and volunteers served homemade blueberry pancakes using Emma's favorite family recipe. Noah proudly demonstrated his science project to younger students. Liam organized a friendly baseball game for neighborhood children. Emma carefully welcomed every guest with handmade drawings that simply read, "Every family deserves a second chance." Ethan walked through the celebration greeting every volunteer by name before stopping beside Claire, who was helping a young mother register for one of the Foundation's family assistance programs. He quietly admired the woman who had carried hope through 7 difficult years without allowing bitterness to shape her heart. "I spent so many years believing strength meant never needing anyone," he admitted softly. Claire smiled. "Now you know real strength means making sure nobody has to carry life alone." As the afternoon slowly turned into evening, the triplets ran across the lawn toward their parents. Noah proudly carried a small wooden box. Liam held a tiny velvet ring cushion. Emma gently carried a bouquet of white wildflowers she had picked herself that morning. Claire looked at Ethan with surprised curiosity. Ethan smiled before kneeling on one knee beneath the old oak tree standing near the center of the gardens. There were no reporters, no business partners, no elaborate ceremony. Only family, close friends, and 3 children whose laughter had changed every life around them. Ethan looked into Claire's eyes with complete sincerity. "Years ago, I asked you to build a future without truly understanding what family meant. Today, I know the answer. Family is choosing each other every single day. Claire Morgan, would you allow me the honor of becoming your husband again, this time as the father our children always deserved?" Before Claire could answer, Emma gently whispered, "Mom, I think Daddy finally learned all the important parts." Claire laughed through grateful tears before extending her hand. "Yes, this time we begin together." Applause filled the gardens as Ethan carefully placed the ring on her finger. Noah, Liam, and Emma wrapped their parents in one joyful embrace while the evening sunlight reflected across the Hudson River. Nearby, Ethan's grandmother quietly watched with peaceful eyes, grateful that the family she had once tried to protect through fear had ultimately been restored through honesty instead. As the celebration continued beneath the warm golden sky, Ethan realized the greatest legacy he would ever leave his children would never be measured by power, wealth, or influence. It would be measured by the lesson they had all learned together, that truth creates trust, trust creates forgiveness, forgiveness creates family, and a family built upon love will always become stronger than one built upon pride. Beneath the gentle evening breeze, surrounded by laughter, hope, and the people who mattered most, the Moretti and Morgan families finally became exactly what they had always been meant to be: one home, one future, and one unbreakable family.